Welcome to Product AMA, your daily online Ask Me Anything. We started Product AMA to give those passionate or curious about product management a daily break, something to look forward to. The format is 1 hour in length, weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. The first 30 minutes will always be a guest and a featured topic. The last 30 minutes is devoted to you, the audience, to ask your questions.
My name's Lee Garrison. I'm your host, and for those that don't know me, I've been very active in the Toronto startup and product management community for quite a number of years. If you're experiencing your first Product AMA with us today, it's a community event that Mark Silver and I started, I guess, almost 2 weeks ago now. And so we've had really a lot of fun last week, bringing you some really interesting conversations with people that you may not normally run across in your product management travel. You can see the recordings from last week's conversations through the Twitter handle @ProductAMA. And to get in touch with us, just direct message us on Twitter. And we'd love your feedback or suggestions for future topics or speakers. So today, our topic is about understanding product managers like a product. And joining us to help explain what that means are Chris Hirst and Carrie Allard, two of the senior product leaders at Intersect. Welcome, both of you, to Product AMA.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to have you guys on. So welcome to the event. So let's start with very briefly getting to know each of you a little. Chris, you've been in the digital services side for most of your career, but it wasn't until you started with Intersect that you more formally took on that role of product manager. How did that happen?
Funnily enough, I started my career in advertising in 2007, just before the last financial crisis. And being relatively strong with computers, was quickly shunted into the digital side of advertising. And truly didn't even know manager was until maybe 2012, 2013, when I was the account director leading Target's ill-fated entry into Canada. That experience for me was somewhat formative in that I realized as an account director, I was competing with more true pure play digital offerings where the leaders, the product managers in those particular seats were significantly more skilled than I was, particularly as relates to depth of knowledge, as relates to technology. So for me, that was probably the start of it, losing a number of sort of new business opportunities for lack of technical skills within the agency I was working at. That for me, being only 30 at that time, sort of indicated I needed to transition stable and functional for a longer period of time. And so started to pursue product management roles at that point. Didn't really get there until 2015, 2016, when Intersect, formerly B Notions, a place where I've been for the better part of the last 8 years, allowed me the courtesy of downgrading myself from account director to product manager. So sort of have clawed my way back up the ladder again here, but am grateful to have the title because I think it's a better, more well-rounded approach to understanding technology products, particularly in professional services.
I love it. You've come over to the dark side from sales, Carrie, you started your career path more on the marketing side, and then you moved into a product owner role, and then into product leadership, where you are now. What got you interested in product management to start with?
So similar to Chris, I didn't really know what product management was. I didn't know about this discipline. And I had come from a marketing background, as you said, and I started working at a startup after I had completed an MBA. And there you just wear a lot of different hats. And I became very involved in working on the product without really knowing that I was doing product management. And I actually talked to a friend of mine, and he asked me, "What are you doing for your job?" And I described in a long-winded way what I was doing. And he was like, "Oh, you're doing product management." And so I looked it up, and then I confirmed, yes, that's what I'm doing. And it really appealed to me compared to marketing for a few reasons. The first is marketing is about creating positioning and about messaging. And product, you do a lot of those things in the same way, but you actually deliver a product. So with marketing, where you're delivering almost like a pitch, with product, your product speaks for itself and it delivers that value. And being able to bring something to market that can really impact people's lives was a really important thing for me to do. Also, I feel strongly about having diverse groups of people doing product management, because it's really important that we have different perspectives for these products that we all use. Because in a lot of ways, products, especially digital products, really shape the world that we live in. And so that's one of the reasons why I've continued to pursue it and interested in influencing the products that we're going to be working with, apps, websites, and also other software products as well.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you're both of you are sort of the the typical path for many product people, which is why we call it the accidental profession, right? It's nobody goes to university for product management, but we all come from a different background, which is actually what makes it really interesting, and I think to some extent successful, when you can incorporate all those different perspectives and experience into the process, right? That's neat. Let's talk a little bit about Intersect as a professional services firm. I'm guessing that you guys do development and you're building apps for clients. Is that what the product teams are mostly focused on, or tell us a little bit about the role of product management overall there?
So you've sort of nailed it. You can think of Intersect as essentially a consulting firm with a strong executional ability, which is a slight dig at consulting firms, I suppose. Essentially what we do across the last 5 years is we've moved up the ladder, finally working with enterprise really across the last 2 or 3 years, primarily building banking products. We recently re-platformed President's Choice Financial. So if you're using those apps, that's us. We've been working with the LCBO for a number of years, the Ontario Canada Store. Until this pandemic, we were working with WestJet. And truly it sort of inculcates a very unique perspective on product management. When we think about product managers and at Intersect, or in the more traditional definition of the role, you often sort of think, this is somebody who is leading from behind, who is gathering ideas and trying to pull them in, and getting consensus and driving towards that product market fit. The challenge being in services side, you actually have sometimes more access to a broader breadth of a product. Like, we're engaging with, when we started with President's Choice Financial, we had to build everything from login all the way to, the customer services portal and how that whole piece would work. So it's got this weird flavor to it in that we sort of function like enterprise clients, technology lawyers. We tell them what they can and can't do, what the trade-off. I can't control them. I can't tell them, no, you're not going to do that. But I can offer my best counsel to try and help them make the right decision, while fundamentally also contributing on the idea of how do they build a successful product delivery process. Usually we are a stopgap. They don't want to go out, or they've tried to build the department internally. They can't do it, so they come to us. We joke that all of our projects end up as staff aug, because they hire a bunch of people, we sunset a bunch of people, and eventually we are we are letting them out of the chain, or off the chain rather.
Mm-hmm. Neat. And you have a fairly large team, I guess. You said around 20 product managers.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a team of 20 at this point. That Carrie, myself, and one other senior leader are sort of fundamentally responsible for. To close the loop on why I think about product managers as a product, previously in the role I would have played 2 years ago, the product I was working on was the most important thing in my mind every day. It was the most, the puzzles it created, the hard work it required, the amount of effort and emotion I was putting into it was somewhat overwhelming. And I think that is true for most product managers who really love what they do. Your product really becomes your life. As you descend into management, you realize you don't get to do as much of that product stuff anymore. And I think that's, for people who love product, it's frustrating. And one of the sort of grand ironies of corporate ascension, like being really good at something means you have to stop doing it and now manage people who do it. And so the way I got over this was to start to think about my product managers at Intersect as the product, as the thing I cared about the most, as the thing I wanted to tinker and toy and figure out how to get the maximum amount of output from them, while also sort of supporting them and understanding where their strengths and weaknesses were, and trying to understand how to pair them into teams or with the right solutions architect or the right front end lead in order to create really super high functioning teams. Don't need to stress this too much, but Intersect is being a professional services organization means that every hour of every day must be fully utilized in order for our business to be successful. And so, to have a non-functional product team or a product team that doesn't jive well with the client, or a product team that sort of ends up in conflict with one another because they can't figure it out, these are challenges similar to the ones you would have in sort of making trade-offs and sacrifices in the development of a product. Carrie, would you add anything to that as a new joiner?
I would just go on to say Intersect or any place, product managers, the way you grow their careers and the way that you continue to build out the skill sets or build out the functionality similar to a product almost, there can be a roadmap that can be taken. And Intersect has really defined what are the different skills at the different levels and what do you work towards. So everyone has a good understanding of where they can build up in order to become a more effective product manager. And I think that should be true for every product leader, that they're looking at their team and helping them to guide that skill set that they're looking more effective, just like products become more effective with increased features or functionality.
Yeah, that's neat. It's almost like you when you say you treat treat the product manager like a product, it's almost the product has become the process and the skill sets and the kind of team knowledge base and that sort of thing, and that's what you're really trying to create or sort of improve and optimize the value of, at the same time as respecting people, of course. There's we always like to say, we want to have empathy for the product. In this case, you really do have to have empathy for your product, right? Carrie, tell us about your role and how do you and Chris work together? Like, kind of divide and conquer things, or what's your respective sort of areas of expertise?
Yeah, so Chris and I come from slightly different backgrounds, merging into product management. And so far, it's been a really nice combination, because Chris is really strong on that account management and on that sales. And I've learned a lot from working with him. And coming from more startup background and marketing background, we've worked well together to kind of blend our skills. Additionally, being new to Intersect means that I need to learn about the processes there. I need to learn about the way to deliver effectively there. And Chris has just been instrumental in working with me. And I would say that at any company, anytime you join, having a counterpart that can give you the history of the clients that you're working with and give you an understanding of kind of some of those mentalities and the people on your team is really invaluable. So we've taken, in some cases, I've taken the lead on some accounts, and Chris has really been tag teaming with me on some other aspects of it, where he has the history and where he has the relationship to help to build up. And that's something that is important to me, and I think should be important to anyone joining a company, to look at, do you have this support system? Do you have these people who will help you to really be successful? And Chris is certainly not the only person at Intersect. It's a great team, but he sits he sits directly next to me when we're in the office. Obviously not now when we're in quarantine, but he sits directly next to me, and we're just communicating throughout the day on a range of problems and a range of solutions.
Right. So I would imagine that one of the differences between Intersect and your roles there and a more kind of standard, software or product-driven companies, product teams, is that you're a bit more sort of client and project focused, right? So there's kind of a beginning and end, or maybe sometimes you're into a longer-term relationship with a client. Whereas, and that probably affects how you discovery portion, like in product organization or product driven companies, part of the responsibility of the product manager is to kind of always be scanning those inputs and looking for opportunities to improve and solve problems, right? Whereas you get involved with a client, and yes, to some extent you are still doing that discovery piece, but it's not like it's an ongoing thing forever, or is it? Maybe tell me if it's different.
So agencies, Intersect, and other agencies as well, many times will follow almost a waterfall discovery process. And that's similar to, as a new product manager and you're working on a product that you're not super familiar with, you need to get up to speed on the market, the users, the opportunities, and what is important to the stakeholders as well. And so in a professional services environment, you're doing that initially, and then you can go into a build phase once you have that initial roadmap that you're looking to build out against in the first phase. And then it depends. Like some clients, you're doing ongoing discovery and you move into almost an agile process, and you're working as you learn more to adjust what you are going to build initially, which becomes much more similar to a regular software company where you're building product that you're selling. But there is some difference in that starting point, because you do need to get ramped up. And then from there, it depends on the relationship with the client. And oftentimes, as you said, you work on projects and it starts and it ends. The ideal is that it doesn't end, and that you build that rapport and you continue to work over multiple iterations on the product with the client, and you transition from a customer relationship to a partner relationship. What would you have to say about that, Chris?
Yeah, I would just add to this. One of the old metaphors, analogies we used to run with is that typically when an enterprise organization interfaces to a professional services organization, they're building missiles. They want to build something, they want to target it, and then they want to fire it, and for it to have impact, thus closing the chapter of what we've done together. When you build software products interfacing to an enterprise company, what you're actually building is spaceships. And what that means is, you are not only building the product that needs to go up into space, but you are also planning for the operationalization of that product once it is in space. There is too much money involved with software engineers, as we all know, to put a product up into the world and then say, we are done. That is fine. This year, I've really been talking to my clients about the concept of software rot, which feels a little bit strange, right? Because code itself, it's just lines of computer. But what's happened with the pace of technology and the way the world is progressing is that, a client I had last year, 2 years ago, who shall remain unnamed, basically got 90% of the way to the line on a multi-platform product, web, iOS, and Android, and then sort of dropped the ball on the back end. The money didn't come through. We only finished the web. And when they came back to us and said, this year, and said, man, we really want to get those mobile apps back into place. As far as we knew, we had 10% left. 10% of our total cost was this. They were like, let's get going. When we actually did the estimation, because of evolutions in the OSs, because of evolutions in the libraries and the APIs we were using, they actually had 40 or 50% of the cost had crept back up on them. So software rot is a real thing. And so, to the question at hand, we need to be really thoughtful about the way we are training our clients to do things like discovery. If they don't want to pay us to do it on an ongoing fashion, we are trying to build that capacity back into them. Certainly alongside things like DevOps, things like software development, things like working QA processes. One of our principles at Intersect, and I'll close on this, is that is from Marshall McLuhan, and it basically is what you design designs you back. So as we design products, what we're finding is this really interesting implication that our clients and their operations need to be designed back. So the product is implementing something that could happen in the world. We need to understand how that goes backward into the organization.
Right, right. I think, yeah, and that sort of role of the agency or consultants has changed dramatically over a generation, where, you know, now you're not just the product itself, but you're also helping the organization to develop a process and you know, something that's repeatable and scalable, and hopefully you're involved in that for the longer term. But sometimes it's just about knowledge transfer and making sure that they can start to swim on their own to some extent. That's neat. Yeah.
That's what
So just as a reminder for everybody that's participating online, we're taking questions for Chris and Carrie to answer directly, but please post them on our Twitter handle at ProductAMA, and post your questions there, and we'll get to them fairly soon. I want to go back to the notion of managing product managers like a product. Give us a little deeper understanding of what that means in terms of your specific relationships with individual product managers, and how that's different from how you might have, you know, managed before you got into this or had this perspective. Just, you know, give us an example or illustration of how that's different.
So I think one of the main differences between managing product managers and managing other people is product managers work in a way where they're really thinking holistically, and they're working not in such a siloed capacity. And so when I've managed UX designers in the past, it's pretty standard what UX designers are going to do. And I know that could be an argumentative point to some extent, but for the most part, out of the UX designers I've worked with, there tends to be a similar background that they come from. And what we talked about before, no one goes to school for product management. People do go to school for many of the other types of roles that you might manage. So when you get into product managers, it's really important to understand what motivates them about what they're trying to achieve and where their strengths lie. Because there's a range of different types of skills and expertise that can make product managers successful. Will's perspectives. A product manager who comes from a technical background is most likely going to have different priorities, different skills, different areas of focus than a product manager who comes from a marketing background. And those are only two of the areas. People can come out of sales. People come out of a range of different backgrounds. And so understanding what motivates them and what they can bring to the table as far as strengths go is really important. The second thing that's important is, where does their journey take them? Because product management is not necessarily that everybody wants to move up in product from product manager, senior product manager, director of product, VP of product. Some people want to move into other areas, and they're getting product management as a way of being able to work with diverse teams because they want to go into general management in some kind of capacity or other areas. So understanding at an early stage why people are in product, what they hope to achieve, and then leveraging those skills is one of the things that I've taken as far as lessons learned from managing product managers compared to managing people who come from a more targeted or standard background.
Interesting. Chris, you got any comments on that? Unmute yourself. Okay, you should be. Are you on, Chris? You have to unmute.
Sorry.
Okay.
I've discovered that if I press mute, then I can no longer unmute I'll no longer mute myself anymore.
Okay.
It's as if the angels came down and gave everybody what they really wanted. Yeah, the only thing I would add, and I think it probably echoes what Carrie was mentioning, is just, you know, like a product tends to have extrinsic and intrinsic sort of values, you know. Extrinsic, you know, what values is it servicing, you know, that come from the market values in terms of what value it seeks to provide, you know? So almost like the distance between the niche it's filling and then the niche it seeks to fill. And I have found, you know, in thinking about managing product managers, the thing I sort of care the most about is, to Carrie's point, understanding where they want to go with their career, but also trying to just be really respectful of the person they are. Not everybody is, one of the early lessons I took in my career was, if I get a product coordinator underneath me, I cannot make another Chris Hirst. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is actually figure out what they are good at, and then build around them in a way that really lets them be successful. I think that sort of mirrors how we think about products, in the spirit of like not bloating out your product with stuff it doesn't need.
Mm.
You can ruin something by making it too complicated or by trying to feature load it. In some ways, somebody very early in my career told me not to be too worried about the stuff I wasn't good at, because if I got really good at the job of a coordinator, nobody would ever promote me. And in some ways, I think that is true in how I think about the product managers. I have really brilliant strategic product managers who, have real challenges with the project management and administration required within a professional services firm. But I have really great people who come from project management, who are learning how to be more strategic. And really, these are just a function of care and conversation and engagement, right? So to your question about discovery, it's almost this game of never stopping the discovery of who your product managers are in order to service them best as the one privileged to be their leader.
Nice. I like that. So maybe Carrie, start with you, but tell us a little about some of the challenges you guys have faced over the last 2 weeks, and what, if anything, has changed in your management approach? Because certainly, from what you've been saying, the empathy and the understanding of the people on your team almost requires a lot of FaceTime and conversation and things we're used to doing face to face. What's changed in the last 2 weeks?
Well, obviously, our entire lives have changed. The way that we operate in our day-to-day lives is dramatically different, and that's different at work too. So Intersect, we're really collaborative, and we work very closely together, and we have an open office, and everyone can just have impromptu meetings and can drop by and have conversations. And obviously now we're all working from our own homes, and so that presented a range of challenges as far as how do we take teams and groups of people that are really used to having that way of working and get them to work effectively, and especially as the product managers, because product managers take a real leadership role in the team's success. And so a lot fell to the product managers and the product management team, Chris, myself, other leaders as well, to implement some processes around how do we do this. But ultimately that came down to the product managers needing to be able to group together with their teams and work effectively. In addition to that, some of the other challenges that happened is we have clients in a range of industries, and we have clients in the retail space. And obviously, retail and other industries have changed dramatically over the last 2 weeks. So in addition to dealing with a new way of working, we also had a lot of high priority projects that we had to work on suddenly. Earlier you asked about discovery, and does discovery start in the beginning and then stop and then we build? Well, with our established clients, this was a case where we needed to discover problems that they were facing and ways to help them to be able to maintain their business and continue to operate effectively with very little time. And so it was about looking at our processes that we have and where can we take from what we've built, and where can we take the relationships that have been built along the way and leverage those in order to transition it to a work from home policy. And thank God for technology and for everyone having a laptop at our office, because I know a lot of companies don't necessarily have that set up. So for us, leveraging the existing technology we had, things like Zoom and Slack, we're a big Slack company, and Slack is great for being able to just have impromptu conversations. So taking that way that we were working and transitioning it to, instead of being in person, to being online, was one of the things that we really looked at and that our product managers looked at. We set up a lessons learned worked from home Slack channel where everyone could share their lessons, what worked, what didn't work. And so each team didn't have to be working in silos and learning those lessons on their own. And then working with the client as well to leverage that technology to feel like we're here for you and we are going to help to get where we're going, even though we're in a pandemic, and that's weird. We'll still continue to work with the same amount of effectiveness and the same rigor and the same process and the same quality of delivery that we have other than that. And so, of course, it's challenging, but everyone is surviving, and we get lots of social activities. Chris took us for a walk through his home, introduced us to his family, so that we have that sense of personal touch, and so that we don't have this feeling that we're isolated, because mental health is important as well at these times.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's even more important to support the person while you're trying to, achieve the business objectives, because things aren't, business as usual. Chris, what about you? What's changed in the way you're managing, or I think you mentioned earlier that you've had a few challenges. Tell us a little bit about that and what you've learned from it.
I think, I think this problem scales, and I'm hopeful that all product managers on this call will sort of get some resonance from this. But when you are in a position, any sort of job that involves management, the idea of working from home through a management role is, I think, more challenging than doing it in the office. I don't think, my devs jobs got easier. I bet you they're facing a number of challenges as they go through their day-to-day. But I also think there's probably some advantage that they enjoy where they can freely work without me wandering around the office, shooting my mouth off, looking over shoulders, talking, popping my head into meetings. When you're when you're in a leadership position, that job is significantly advantaged by the idea that I can be anywhere. I can look into any room. I can talk to people. I can grab 4 people that I know all need to hear the same message and pull them into a room really quickly, brief them, give them a few next steps, get them to come back with all their questions. It's much more organic. It's a much more organic form of leadership. I am finding with this sort of self-isolation quarantine environment, like I am just really burning the capacity of my Zoom account. Every day is basically a recurring set of Zoom meetings that start at 8:30 and finish at around 5:30 or 6. And I still don't know if I'm doing enough, because it's hard to get a good bead on how everybody is doing with the work. The work you can sort of look at and judge the quality and, look for holes and help people, but understanding, is the team gelling? Are you seeing the right sort of activities come out of the team? Does the team seem to celebrate, what victories they have? And I don't know that for sure with a lot of these things. So I find that to be one of the most difficult things. To Carrie's point, we are experimenting like crazy. Some teams have like open conference lines that you can just duck in and out of all day long. We are generally trying to enforce, like, if you're on a call, turn your video on if it's safe for work to do so. We are trying to ensure that, we have I've been rolling over the idea now that because we require more meetings, we should cap all meetings at 20 or 45 minutes to ensure that people have time in between those meetings to sort of let all the action items and things they need to do and key takeaways get out of their head and onto paper or into Slack or somewhere where the team can really absorb them. But, it's not all bad. We did launch a product on Friday called Home Visit that will deploy to its first customer set on Wednesday. We're doing a really, really great job holding the line on some sort of super massive enterprise products we've got going. And it's not all bad, but it certainly is more challenging for me than I found my day job to be when we were going into the office.
Yeah. Do you find that you have to plan ahead or be a bit more proactive? You mentioned sort of the habit that everybody has, of course, is, just grab a bunch of people that need to hear the same thing and sit down and talk about it right now. That obviously doesn't happen in quite the same way online. are you finding you're having to sort of plan ahead a bit more on certain things?
Yeah, I'm finding it, not so much planning ahead, but more so being aware of who I have talked to and who I haven't talked to, and in what time span have I not talked to somebody. So typically, if I get 48 hours without talking to one of my directors or senior product managers, we're gonna have a chat, and um, trying to be flexible about that. I have a dog here that I take for walks now all the time, and I'm very capable of, I just use that time to be on the phone with lots and lots of different people in order to check in, just understand where they're at. One of the roles I understand, my roles that I take on is, to clear challenges for my senior leader. So, talking to them, understanding which particular challenges they're facing, um, taking some time. I try and block off between 9 and 10 every morning for me time in order to let all this information turn into something that looks like wisdom, and then planning an attack route for the day as to who I'm going to call first, which problems are the highest priority, and how am I going to solve them. So that tends to be my way.
Nice. This is great. I love hearing your perspectives and how you're working with the product team. We're starting to get a few questions, so let's sort of shift gears and let the participants ask some things. There's a question from Cyrus. How do you find product market fit during your interviews process in the context of understanding product managers like a product?
It's a really good question, actually. Carrie, do you mind if I take this one to start and throw it to you?
Go ahead.
So, product market fit as relates to a product manager. So generally what I'm looking at, so I'll tell you a little story. I am a person who manages his own anxiety by really hyper project managing things. So when I'm trying to hire people, I'm essentially looking at two things. One, how are they going to fit within the culture of Intersect? Do I think that they can sort of figure it out? Carrie will probably tell you, that Intersect's process is really sort of a chaotic understanding of which people to talk to, when, and how to pull them in. So do they look like they are capable of living within that sort of ride the lightning vibe that we bring? And then secondarily, I'm generally thinking about a pyramid. And if you'll picture a pyramid, the base of that pyramid for me, particularly if you're a junior person, needs to be within that project management skill set. Do you do the basics really well? Client work, really challenging. All of the challenges you would have with an internal team of communication, except for the fact now that the client has the money that you need in order to get the product out. And so if you don't get what they want, you don't get the money. So project management and being able to communicate and cover everything that we talked about, really important. Second layer of that pyramid is account management. Understanding the people within the clients that you are working for, who they are, what purview they have as to decisions they can make, what their motivations are, where they live within the business strategy chain, sort of what particular piece of the strategy is most relevant to them. And then finally, if you can do that, both of those things really, really well, you get to that peak of that pyramid, which is product strategy. And product strategy, if you recall previously, in working with clients, we don't actually even get to decide that. I need the client to buy into that, which is why being super functional as a project manager, not dropping anything, letting the client know, you're burning at, when we're burning at like a big team now, it's like, it can be as high as like $100,000 a week to run a team. And a small mistake that costs a day, if you do the math, is a $20,000 mistake. So we need our teams to be really strong at that project management, really minimal number of mistakes across any amount of time. They do that, they earn the client's trust there. Account management, they demonstrate that they can understand the business strategy and carry things through that, sort of make decisions in the client's absence that don't sort of defer too far from what we're trying to do. And if they can do all of that really well, then they can function like their client's product technology lawyer with the product strategy stuff. And that's sort of the two sort of competing matrices I'm operating in as I'm thinking about product market fit for product managers into Intersect.
Nice. Carrie, you're I guess newer to the hiring process or that sort of thing, but what do you have thoughts on that?
So I think Chris did a great job of explaining what is important for Intersect. And the good takeaway from that is anytime a product manager is looking for a position or coming into an organization, it's really good to understand from their perspective as well. Am I a good fit for this organization? Maybe I'm a bit idealistic, but I would like to think that everyone that works on any product team that I'm on is building towards somewhere that they want to go and that they genuinely enjoy, at least for the most part, their work. I know that no job is wonderful all the time, but for the most part, building the skills, working with people, working in a capacity that's rewarding to them. And you move from company to company, and product management roles can be quite different. Some of them are highly focused on delivery. Some are highly focused on project management. Some are highly focused on the idea generation and product management. Some are very analytical. And so to some extent within any organization, people can shape their role depending on how the team is structured, but only to a point. Like, you need to fit into what is needed in the context of that organization. So when we think about product market fit, when you're building for a product, you're looking at who are you building it for, and then looking at how do you position and win in the marketplace. And as a product manager, for hiring managers or for people that are looking for jobs, I think anyone does well to look at what are the capabilities that are needed, and who is the person, and do they really fit, and do they meld well with that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a generic message. Chris did a great job of conveying what that looks like at Intersect. And I believe there are product managers who probably wouldn't want to work at Intersect because they don't want to do the account management or they don't want to do that project management. And then there are product managers that would want to work at Intersect because they don't want to just be focused on just a product. They want that range of experience. And so finding that right match is what's important for any person. Just like a product, products aren't built for everybody, and everyone shouldn't adopt every technology or every product that is built. You adopt that technology, or you buy that product because it serves something that adds value for the user.
Right. Very nice. I think, that there's another question here about the differences of, in a skill set for a PM in, a place like Intersect, more services focused versus a product focused company. And I think you've covered a lot of that, which is great. So one aspect for sure is account management. That's a little different perspective, because it's a different way of dealing with the customer, because it's not necessarily an end user, it's the buyer, right? And also project management. I mean, some like years ago when I was involved with big teams, we actually had a project, office with project managers, full-time project managers on staff that worked with the product teams to help manage the complexity of those things. But so I'm wondering, is that something that you guys have thought of, or is there a specific reason you sort of look to the product managers to manage the project, or do you have a function that helps sort of support and provide a air cover for that?
Many moons ago, we had project managers. Back when B Notions was structured more like an ad agency with account managers paired off with project managers. The challenge really became that project managers just bottlenecked everything. So you would sort of find yourself, because data from the account person would come in as to what the client wanted, that would have such a heavy implication into the sort of paperwork models that the project manager would use, that by the time information from me made it to the dev team by way of the project manager, it could be 2 days later, and we might discover actually that the product team had a simpler solution, a better idea, a better way of doing it. So in 2014, we ripped the Band-Aid off. We took all project management duties and we distributed them across the team. So things like we now have solutions architect, we have strategists, we have writers, we have UX designers, UI designers, technical project managers, business analysts. We have everything except for project managers. And it served us well because it takes something, no disrespect to project managers, but the job can be pretty boring. You know, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of paperwork, keeping non-organized people organized. And we didn't feel that was like a very fair role for somebody to have to play. So we basically just took it and sort of chaotically threw it out into the organization. And that has actually worked pretty well. We have a tighter connection between the product manager and the team. The project management work, you know, things like really just sort of getting the whole backlog understood and into fighting shape is a shared responsibility across the team. We schedules, you know, certain numbers, like the effort value will come from a solutions architect, but that can be manipulated into whatever kind of schedule the product manager wants to run on a product. So we found it to be a more flexible system to not have project managers.
Interesting. That's interesting, and especially, I guess, with the, you know, the sort of emergence of a more lean and agile process, that makes a lot of sense, because you want that prioritization and decision making to be right at the hub.
Yeah.
And as you say, yeah, you can't afford a 2-day delay in figuring out how to organize it, right?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Just as a reminder to our participants, we are taking questions for Chris and Carrie. You can reach us on our Twitter handle @ProductAMA. So ask your questions. We still have a few minutes left, and we'll try to get the questions in. Either of you could answer this, but I'm wondering what kind of recommendations you have for individual product managers in a team about their role in the kind of new environment that's occurred over the last couple of weeks. So you've talked a bit about the team and the dynamics of the team, but what can individual product managers do to adjust to this?
So any product manager, not particularly just at Intersect, but in general, we're in changing times. The market has changed, and what that means is there's opportunities for innovation. What it also means is that your roadmap that existed before and your priorities that existed before may not be valid anymore. And we don't know what's coming in the next weeks or months or years, as far as how people are going to be operating in real industry. If you're in travel, obviously that's one that's been majorly affected. Retail, there's so many industries that have been affected. Opportunities, because there's a lot of different things that are going on right now. There's kids that are home with their parents that need education. There are people that need to get food. There are people who need to get medical care. And regardless of where you're working, as a product manager, now is a time to be looking at trends. Now is a time to be doing research, and now is a time to be reevaluating your priorities and your backlog, and potentially looking at opportunities for new product offerings, for rolling out MVP. Really going back to the drawing board. I'm a major fan, and I know not everyone supports job focusing on what are you trying to achieve? What is the job that, and for users out and who are people, users are people who need to accomplish different jobs. They need to find ways to get their kids education or to keep them occupied. They need to find ways to get food and to get basic supplies, which wasn't the case just a little while ago, and entertain themselves, and all of these different jobs that we're looking at. For product managers, they would do well to look at what are the gaps, what are the current offerings that aren't meeting the needs, and instead of just refining the product or the solution that you have right now, looking at what are opportunities that we can really take in order to look solutions to this changing world. And there's just so much opportunity. It's not, we look at this like this is a terrible space to be in, and that there are a lot of tech jobs that have been lost, and there are a lot of people who are really suffering and who are concerned. But when it comes to innovation, this is a time when there are huge opportunities to just jump on some of these gaps that we see in the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. It speaks to cheese on important problems and figuring out how to solve those problems in new and innovative ways. And so, right, you're absolutely right. Right now, there's a whole different set of problems that much more important. And so if we can shift our focus to that and say is most important now, and not just assume that everything that was important before continues to be, right. Chris, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the way Carrie answered that. I think that's probably the most thoughtful, pragmatic way. You probably gathered already that I run a very emotive style, but I would use this as an opportunity for product managers to reconnect with their teams, to rebalance the way they think about solving problems. Intersect, one of our sort of guiding values is the product manager owns the problem and the team owns the solution. And we find that is a pretty sort of create balance between what our product managers are there to do and what we've hired these brilliant people to do within the context of a product team. So we are I would just add that at this particular moment in time, as we're looking for ways to re-engage with one another that is not face to face, tacking back to principles of really leaning on your team and leveraging them for the brilliant people they are, I think can be a really valuable exercise as we sort of figure out how to do this in the long haul.
Right, yeah. I'm not seeing any more questions at this moment. Mark, is there anything there that I'm missing? Nope. Okay. He says no. We're good. Okay. Let's see. We have a couple of minutes left. Any final thoughts on this idea of managing PMs like a product? Anything that we haven't covered that you think would be helpful to other leaders and teams?
I just think, like, in this particular moment in history, we all want to be successful. Everybody wants to carry on. Carrie. But I would sort of put a plea out there for people to be kind to themselves. These are hard times. Like it's hard on the old soul to think about what we're actually going through, and going forward in life with a is never been harmful in my book. And I would just say, just like you sort of have some fault tolerance with your product, when you go through that big QA backlog and you're trying to define what is high sev, high priority, you can be that way to yourself. For some lapses in judgment or lapses in ability, we're all trying to work this out. And I'm proud of the team at Intersect and the way we're figuring it out. And I just, I hope everybody is doing it in a way that is nice to themselves and is tolerant of faults within the process that may not have been there 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think, empathy is even more important now than it ever has been. And of course, we haven't been in an environment like this, so we don't really have a roadmap or a rule book. And you're absolutely right. You've got to be empathetic to yourself as well as to others. That's a really helpful thought. Carrie, any final thoughts on this before we wrap up?
Building off of that empathy, product managers are in the position to have a strong voice in what gets built. And I think that they don't make final decisions. There's this misconception that product managers are like the CEO of the product. But what it does mean is at this time that product managers can be major influencers in the types of products that are coming out. And we've seen a lot of organizations that have really stepped up and modified what they're producing. Dyson is putting out masks, and there's so many opportunities in today's world, not only to try to generate revenue, but on Chris's point, to be kind, not only to yourself, but to others. And a plea I would make to product managers in general is those opportunities of people. Use that voice and use that time today to look for those opportunities that will make positive outcomes of what we're looking for now and in the long term. And it's just going to be rewarding beyond salary, beyond everything else. I think that is the essence of product management. Product management is about improving the lives of people with better products that reduce pain and that make it easier for people to function. And any opportunity to do that in a pandemic is just, that's huge. Hopefully it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I very much hope we don't perpetually live in pandemic and crisis mode. But being able to step up and make that difference is just something I think that people will remember for the rest of their lives, and that others will remember as well. And it will lend credence to this idea that product management is a really powerful, a really important profession that can step up and that can guide and lead in a way that's really impressive. So manage your own careers the way that you would manage a product and look for those opportunities. And at Intersect, we'll try to do the same.
Nice. Well said. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. This has been really enlightening. I hope it's been helpful to our participants. Please, for everybody that's joining us today, please spread the word about Product AMA, Ask Me Anything. And please share any feedback or future topic ideas by messaging us on our Twitter handle @ProductAMA. Mark, do you want to show the screen for for tomorrow? You can join us again tomorrow, that's Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, when we talk with Gabe Smallman, who is president of Adept Mobile, about how they're building omni-channel fan experience in mobile products. And so that'll be an interesting insight into a totally different world in sports media. You can follow us on Twitter @ProductAMA for the registration link for tomorrow's event, and Wednesday and Thursday we have scheduled events too. So keep track of us. And again, Chris, Carrie, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to talk to people that are as empathetic and caring about managing teams as you are. So keep up the great work. And we'll meet sometime soon when we're all through this. But thanks again.
Follow Product AMA on Twitter and send us your topic suggestions. We look forward to seeing you soon.